Lupin III From Siberia with Love, also known as From Russia with Love and originally known in English as Bank of Liberty, is the fourth Lupin TV special which first aired in July 1992. Though it has nothing to do with the James Bond novel From Russia with Love, or its film counterpart, nor the 2022 Japanese live-action film of the same name, which I only learned was a thing as I recorded this, it does center heavily around the legacy of Russia as a major world power in the 20th century. This was the first special produced and aired after the end of the Cold War and dissolution of the Soviet Union, so naturally, it made for a good premise to tie into what was happening in the world. It also made sense considering how tense the relationship between Russia and Japan was back then, and in many cases still is. Things first really came to a head in 1904 with the Russo-Japanese War, and once the USSR was established, hostilities between the two nations continued, such as dispute over ownership of the Kuril Islands, which, as of this video, have yet to be resolved. In the post-Soviet era, relations were at least beginning to cool slightly, but there was still a lot of anti-Russian sentiment lingering in Japan. I can't claim that the staff on this special, which was mostly the same as the last few, were prejudiced against the Russians, and in fairness, that didn't necessarily permeate to the narrative they developed. The film does reference elements of the Cold War, like unflattering pastiches of George H.W. Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev, but it's mostly an independent story that uses the fall of the Soviet Union as a springboard for an original plot. Lupin III From Siberia with Love premiered on July 24, 1992, the last of the string of 4 Osamu Dezaki directorial works that started this Lupin special marathon.
今回俺たちは500トンの金塊をめぐって強敵ラスプートンと対決するアクションお色気なんでもあり金曜ロードショールパン賛成ロシアより愛を込めてよろしく
By this point, the formula established by Dezaki and writer Hiroshi Kashiwabara had become apparent, and From Siberia with Love doesn't deviate from it at all. And while it's no masterpiece, upon rewatch, I found it to be a solid enough special with just enough intrigue and action to keep you entertained. So let's start, as usual, with a look at the plot. From Siberia with Love begins with Lupin hot on the trail of the gold of the Romanovs given by Tsar Nicholas II to the Russian captain of the guards after he helped the Tsar and his family escape following the Russian Revolution. The gold disappeared for years, but apparently the gold was deposited in a bank in San Antonio, and of course, Lupin wants his hands on it. In pursuit of knowledge about the Romanov family history, Lupin and Jigen encounter a mysterious woman named Judy who, along with Fujiko, conspire to take the gold, and 2 other thieves, a pair of henchmen named Lucky and Joe, close in on the treasure as well. These 2 are contracted by yet another man seeking the gold, Rasputin. That's Rasputin, not Rasputin, and also not that Danish children's entertainer. With other parties like the New York Mafia also interested in the treasure, it becomes a battle for dominance and control over the Romanov dynasty. It's a far more straightforward robbery quest this time, with Lupin and a bunch of others interested in the same treasure and spending the entire movie fighting each other over it. There's a lot to keep track of as far as characters and their respective angles, with ties back to the history of the treasure and its legacy. I really like the choice to make the treasure belong to the Romanov family, not just because it was old enough to make sense for a sought-after fortune, but also because it would have been a little too on the nose for a special released in 1992 to focus on the Soviet Union. Although it does take some inspiration from current events, especially concerning the remains of Nicholas II's daughter Anastasia. Unlike in this special, of course, in real life, the Tsar and his family were executed following the revolution. Following the collapse of the Soviet regime, the bodies of most of Nicholas's family and close staff were uncovered, though according to many sources, the body of youngest daughter Anastasia wasn't found, leading some to believe that she managed to survive and escape Russia, possibly starting a family. Now, her body would later be unearthed and positively identified in 2007 thanks to DNA evidence, and it was concluded that she died in 1918 like the rest of her family, but at the time, the legend surrounding Anastasia's fate made for an entertaining historical puzzle. Siberia uses this as a place to kickstart the story, explaining what makes the treasure so valuable, and then boomeranging it back at the end with the reveal that Judy is actually Anastasia's granddaughter. So in true Lupin fashion, it takes modern concepts and fascinations and puts it through a classical, or historical in this case, lens. But even on a fundamental level, this one has quite an engaging narrative. The gold trades hands a few times, and the big players often come to blows over it, with a number of action sequences sprinkled throughout the work and plenty of locations to visit. And with a main villain that's pretty memorable, not to mention intimidating, it's actually a fairly tense ride all the way through. What's great about Siberia though is how it gives us just enough time with every faction vying for the gold to make us care about the stakes, not just the main ones. This is one of the denser character webs of the specials so far, and yet it gives each of them a bit of ground to shine. Some of them could have used more development, like the Mafia Don, and especially his usurping right-hand man Dumbino, but it's not a huge issue overall. It does lead to a lot of problems with the finale though, mostly in the pacing department. It's not terrible, but the villains are all dealt with just a bit too quickly, and there's some fat that could have been trimmed in the first and second acts. It also makes the reveal of Judy's lineage feel a little forced, as if it was designed just to have a last-minute twist for the finale, and while it's built up well enough, it's not exactly a super meaningful one. Given a better sense of pace, these issues would have had more attention, though as it stands, Siberia fares well enough with its story. On the character front, the Lupin gang is overall, I guess the word is subdued compared to other stories. Not in a neutered kind of way, more that the characters just kind of fall into their expected roles. Even though Siberia ups the nudity and sexual exploits a bit, Lupin's relatively tame in this regard, being softer and more aloof, akin to Cagliostro, as a lot of TV special Lupins are. Jigen's got less of an edge as well, and Fujiko once again has a duplicitous role, but it's a more subtle deception. Then we've got Zenigata, who is yet again barely a factor here, spending most of his screen time just trying to catch up with the plot, less demeaning than other works, but still not a great look for old pops. By this point, the writers figured the audience likely already had expectations for the Lupin gang in mind and didn't feel the need to go any farther beyond them. With a lesser story, it easily could have come across as lazy, but thankfully, the other characters do pick up the slack. Rasputin is a devious and scheming individual right from the get-go, not really putting up any kind of facade, at least not for the audience. While over-the-top Lupin villains like this can sometimes be hit or miss, I think this one works because he manages to fit pretty naturally within the Lupin universe. He's got a sense of class and maturity, but also the same wacky energy of a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure villain, and hey, he's even got a name to match. The Lupin girl Judy immediately establishes herself as a take-charge kind of person, which is nice to see. I like seeing her interact with Lupin and Fujiko, though I think she peaks early as a character and fizzles out by the end, especially as she becomes another romantic interest for Goemon. Though speaking of Goemon, he's forced to act for the villain this time, which has been done before, but usually as a result of him being deceived or misled to go against Lupin. Here, he's only doing it because Rasputin's stolen Zantetsuken, or Steel Cleaver as the subtitles call it, and watching him being forced to serve under that maniac is pretty gripping. Finally, I want to highlight the henchmen Lucky and Joe, who are very distinct among the other nameless henchmen that came before them. It helps that they've both got character arcs and aren't just a side element of Rasputin's forces. You can see why both of them are motivated to go after this treasure even beyond their boss's wishes. There isn't a ton to say about the animation this time, or at least not a ton to say that I haven't already been saying for the past few specials. You've got more or less the same character designs, tall heads, and softer facial expressions and all, though there's a little more angular line work in the new characters. Whether this was done intentionally or not to make them stand out, or is just a product of the animators and artists on staff, I can't say, but it's a good contrast at least. The action is pretty solid overall, not a ton of extraordinary shots. In fact, I can't say that any bits of animation really come to mind, but it looks alright. Where it really gets annoying is in that Dazaki style, which is far too prevalent. I've mentioned how his style can either be really cool or really annoying, depending on how much is used, and in Siberia, it's very much overused. The dark shadows are nice, and the Dutch angles are pretty neat, even if they're not plentiful, but man, I wish this animation was given more budget. I'm referring specifically to the triple take effect, that anime cliche where a motion is repeated 3 times or more to represent the impact of a physical gesture. In sparsity, it can be a way to really sell that impact, but overusing it can seriously ruin any sense of fluidity in the animation. All the Dazaki Lupin specials have done this to some extent, but in Siberia, it's overbearing. The opening alone has triple take whiplash, with 5 shots in a row using this technique. Many of them end in a harmony cell, which are nice in a bubble, but become way too frequent. I get that it's a cheaper way to convey movement without having to draw new frames. Animation is expensive, and I'm sure the budget for this special wasn't staggering. But there's only so much mileage you can get out of this technique before it becomes annoying, and Siberia blows its load on this far too quickly. And as for the music, gotta be honest, I barely even noticed it here. Don't care much for the ending theme Golden Game, composed by Yuji Ono with lyrics by Yoshiko Miura and performed by Hatsumi Shibata. It's fine, but nothing to write home about. It's not that the special has low quality music, as Ono's voice and talent does shine, but it never stuck out to me as actively enhancing my viewing experience, so I guess take that for what it's worth. Yet despite its flaws and the fact that it never quite reaches the heights that it wants to reach, I still found myself liking From Siberia with Love. Not on the level of other Lupin works though, and looking at it objectively, I'd probably say the special is passable. It's got some good characters and a tight and intriguing premise, but it's bogged down by rough animation and pacing quirks. I do always appreciate when the Lupin series aims to be more grandiose and complex, and Siberia makes a pretty respectable attempt. In the last video, I mentioned how wild and deeper Lupin stories can sometimes be overwhelming, as it's easy for the series to bite off more than it can chew. Siberia is a victim of this, sure, but I find that more of its swings are hits rather than misses. Worth a watch? Sure, if you're already familiar enough with Lupin to check out more of the series and you're looking for a solid entry. Outside the core audience, it probably won't thrill you, but sometimes even a simply okay Lupin story is good enough for me. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave a comment, and be sure to subscribe and click that bell to be notified when new videos go live. I hope you've had a great holiday season and wish you all a happy New Year's. I'm planning a lot of great things in 2023 and I can't wait to share them with you all. Lupin retrospective videos will pause until February as I get other projects up and running, but I do have some Lupin content in mind for January, and when Legacy of Lupin proper returns, it'll be better than ever. Until then, this is CloudConnection signing off.